What the House managers were proposing yesterday is basically to destroy the institution of the presidency as we know it, make it naked when it comes to partisan impeachment, not have a venue to go to court and litigate privileges that have been exercised by prior presidents. When it comes to Donald Trump, they're willing to destroy the institution of the office in the name of getting him. They would have the United States Senate create an impeachment process where the president would not be allowed to go to Article III courts to argue privileges that have been argued in every other impeachment trial and have been argued by presidents since George Washington. That would destroy the institution of the presidency as we know it. What would it do? It would allow a handful and a 300+ million country, people, along partisan lines to impeach a president without independent judicial review.
To compel the Ukrainian president to do his political dirty work, President Trump withheld from President Zelensky 2 official acts of great importance: that coveted White House meeting, to which the President Zelensky had already been invited, and $391 million in military assistance Ukraine needed to fight the Russians. For a strategic partner of the United States in a hot war with Russian-backed forces inside its own borders, the symbolic support conferred on it by an Oval Office visit with the President of the United States and the life-saving support of our military aid was essential. As the House's presentation will make clear, in directly soliciting foreign interference and withholding those official acts in exchange for the announcement of political investigations beneficial to his re-election, the President put his own interests above the national interest. President Trump undermined the integrity of our free and fair elections by pressing a foreign power to influence our most sacred right as citizens, our right to freely choose our leaders. And he threatened our national security by withholding critical aid from a partner on the front lines of war with Russia, an aggressor that has threatened peace and stability on an entire continent. In so doing, the President sacrificed not only the security of our European allies, but also our nation's core national security interests. President Trump undertook this pressure campaign through hand-picked agents inside and outside of government who circumvented traditional policy channels. President Trump intentionally bypassed many U.S. government career officials with responsibility over Ukraine and advanced his scheme primarily through the effort of his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. President Trump carried out this scheme with the knowledge of senior administration officials, including the President's acting Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Vice President Mike Pence, National Security Council Legal Advisor John Eisenberg, and White House Counsel Pat Cipollone. When the President became aware that the scheme would be uncovered, he undertook an unprecedented effort to obstruct the House of Representatives' impeachment inquiry and to hide it from the public and from Congress, including all evidence related to his misconduct. This, of course, was not the first time that President Trump embraced Russian activity and disinformation. On July 24 of last year, Special Counsel Robert Mueller testified before Congress that Russia interfered in the 2016 election in a, quote, sweeping and systemic fashion to benefit Donald Trump's political campaign. Mueller and his team found that, quote, the Russian government perceived that it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome. They also found that the Trump campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. Following Special Counsel Mueller's testimony, during which he warned against future interference in our elections, did the President recognize the threat posed to our democracy and renounce Russian interference in our democracy? Did he choose to stand with his own intelligence agencies, both houses of Congress, and the Special Counsel's investigation in affirming that Russia interfered in our last election? He did not. Instead, only 1 day after Special Counsel Mueller testified before Congress, empowered in the belief that he had evaded accountability for making use of foreign support in our last election, President Trump was on the phone with the President of Ukraine, pressing him to intervene on President Trump's behalf in the next election.
As we tell this story, it is important to note that the facts before us are not in dispute. There are no close calls. The evidence shows that President Trump unlawfully withheld military assistance appropriated by Congress to aid our ally in order to extort that government into helping him with his re-election, then tried to cover it up when he got caught. One obstacle to Mr. Giuliani's work was Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. A 33-year veteran of the Foreign Service, Ambassador Yovanovitch had partnered with Ukraine to root out the kind of corruption that would have allowed Mr. Giuliani's lies to flourish. In order to complete his mission, Mr. Giuliani first needed Ambassador Yovanovitch out of the way. And so in early 2019, Mr. Giuliani launched a public smear campaign against the ambassador, an effort that involved Mr. Giuliani's allies in Ukraine, the President's allies in the United States, and eventually President Trump himself.
Ukrainians across the country organized in an unprecedented, united civil movement not seen since World War II to raise money to supply their ragtag military with everything from soldiers' boots to bullets. And while our friends were at war with Russia, wearing sneakers, some without helmets, something else was happening. On July 25th, President Trump made a phone call. He spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky and asked for a favor. We help our partner fight Russia over there so we don't have to fight Russia here. Our friends on the front lines and trenches with sneakers. DoD provided materials explaining that the $250 million funding package was for additional training, equipment, advisory efforts to build the capacity of Ukraine's armed forces. DoD emphasized, quote, almost all of the dozens of vendors are U.S. companies, meaning that this funding also benefited U.S. businesses and workers. Nonetheless, President Trump put the wheels in motion to freeze the funds shortly after learning about DoD's plan to release the funds. According to a New York Times article on June 27th, Chief of Staff Mulvaney emailed Blair, quote, I'm just trying to tie up some loose ends. Did we ever find out about the money from Ukraine and whether we can hold it back? Blair reportedly responded that it would be possible, but not pretty. He added, quote, expect Congress to become unhinged.
Quid pro quo is a Latin term. It means this for that. Statement that I just read shows that President Zelensky fully understood at